All right, guys, I know it has been a little while since we've had ourselves a vlog from fabulous Las Vegas, but that all changes tonight. Right behind me stands the Aria Casino Resort, Las Vegas hotel, spas, suites, and shops. Tonight, we are getting back into the mix in a 10-20 private game, which I imagine will play significantly bigger than 10-20. I've told the swings average $10, $15, $20,000 in this game. I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna buy in for $5,000 to start. We're gonna see what happens. Before we go, one quick announcement. If you guys have not already, head over to this website here and use code Andrew because I'm giving away 10 free golden passports to a $5 million free roll happening this December in this very city of Las Vegas. Strongly recommend doing that. It's completely free, takes 2 minutes. All right, guys, it's also gonna take me 2 minutes to walk over to the poker room from here. Let's start now. Let's get in there. Let's get in the mix.
It feels good to be back on my old stomping grounds of Las Vegas as we head inside the Aria. It's easily one of the nicest casino properties in the world, but there are a bit of nerves at play as well. It's been about 4 months since I played a proper poker session in Vegas. When you got thousands of dollars at stake and you're willing to add on for 5 figures, the stakes and results can be pretty damn big. I've heard this game in particular has some major volatility. Anytime there's trips on board, everyone has to put in $300 and we do a flip to see who makes the best hand. Nobody's more excited about it than this guy. And to make sure the action never stops, the stand-up game / nit game will be on all the time. This is definitely not your typical 2-blind, no-limit Texas Hold'em game. As mentioned, the stand-up game constantly in effect. Not just the $40, but the $80 straddle on in this hand. Action on me, looking down at ace-8 of diamonds, very raisable. Go ahead, bump this up to $200. We see 2 callers, one from the small blind and one in the $80 straddle spot. 3 ways to jack 3-3, 2 clubs. Action checks over to me. Pretty tough for anyone to have connected on this board. Jack X available, some flush draws available. But if we can bet and win the hand right here, that seems great. I fire out for $240. We see 1 fold, and we see 2 folds. We obviously have the best hand here, but all things considered, pretty great getting to release the nit button, dragging a small pot. It wouldn't take too long for things to get extra spicy in this game, and that is what happens here. With the $80 straddle on once again, we see 2 limpers before a middle position raise up to $700. This is the effect that the stand-up game / nit game can have. People constantly fighting to release their nit buttons. Sizings go way up, action levels way up as well. And action over to us now, looking down at pocket kings. Things you'd love to see with a massive raise and a call in front of you. Obviously put in the 3-bet here, just a question of sizing, and I decide on a sizing of $3,200 to go. The 2 limpers get out of the way. The middle position player thinks things over before making the fold as well. And back over to the caller in the $40 straddle, who goes super deep into the tank, thinking things over for so long that it makes me question whether he's already done something and action is back on me. But no, he is thinking things over for a very long time before eventually deciding to make the call. So we go heads up, the 2 of us, to a flop that comes down ace-7-4, 2 hearts, 1 spade. Poker players, they like to call these pocket kings ace magnets, and this flop comes in like straddler checks it over to me. Could put in a small wager here. Ace high flop should be good for the pre-flop aggressor. I don't think we're gonna get action from under pairs on this board, so I just decided to check it back, see what the turn brings, and go from there. That turn comes down the 8 of spades, 2 flush draws on board now. Once again, my opponent checks it over to me. Board is getting more and more wet. Gotta feel like if my opponent had an ace king or ace queen type hand, he would do some wagering at this point. So I feel a little bit more comfortable, and we don't really have too much money left behind. So with about $4,000 effective at this point, we're gonna go ahead, stick all that money in there. Thankfully, we do fade the snap call, so I'm feeling pretty good about the pocket kings now at this point. And my opponent thinks about it for a little while before releasing his hand, and we have to show it down, and he gives it the nod. And later on, my opponent would tell me that he actually had pocket queens here in this spot, just flatting the initial raise and then flatting my giant 3-bet. And as it turns out, that board does not come down super favorable for the kings, because if it's all lower cards, very good chance we get the maximum here. And also, I don't think I played this hand very optimally looking back. When we put in the 3-bet to $3,200 and there's only about $4,000 left in my stack to play for, chances are we basically have no 3-bet folds. We're basically committing our entire stack. And so whenever that's the case, I feel like 3-bet jamming pre-flop might have been the better play, especially with the stand-up game on. We'll get less credit, and it might look, oddly enough, less strong, jamming all $7,000+ into the middle than the sizings that I chose here. Feel like pocket queens would have to call off pre-flop in that spot, so I am left feeling like we missed out on some value there, but not a terrible result, all things considered. Moving on here with the $80 straddle still on, and the stand-up game on as usual, we see 3 limpers before looking down at the ace-queen offsuit. Feels very raisable, feels quite premium, the stand-up game on constantly and all these limpers. So I put in a raise and choose a sizing of $500. Try that on for size, limpers. Action folds around to MJ, who is the second limper in this spot, and he says, yeah, that fits. Flop comes 10-9-3 with 2 spades, and MJ checks it over to me. We obviously don't connect here, but on the positive side, we do have the queen of spades in our hand, so we can definitely bluff some spades. And if we do decide to check here, we basically cap ourselves, and our hand will be face up at that point. So I kind of like a bet here, and not a small one, and I choose a sizing of $600. MJ makes the call, unfortunately, and we head to a turn card, which is an offsuit 3. He checks it over to me again, and of course we could put our foot on the gas, but I feel like with nothing having changed on this turn card, and MJ not really being one to give up too often, I just decided to check it back and take a free card. River double pairs the board on the 10 of spades, also completing the front door flush draw. MJ checks it over to me again, and I know I mentioned bluffing spades, but I'm not too sure our story would make a ton of sense now representing a flush on a double paired board. I think we also have pretty good showdown value with an ace here. We might chop a lot of the time, probably don't expect to scoop all that often, but just decided to check it back, and we get shown pocket queens or a limp call pre-flop. Much stronger than expected hand getting shown down there. MJ being a tough player, never know what he's going to do or show up with, but pretty glad I didn't put my foot too hard on the gas in this spot, even though that could be a classic case of results-oriented thinking here. Just the $40 straddle on in this spot, and we look down at 2 ladies. The 2 queens in early position. Let's raise it up and make it $150 to go. Action over to the player on the button who wants to play for a little bit more. He goes ahead and 3-bets it up to $700. Action back over to me. We're only about $5,000 effective in this spot, and I'm not going to make the same mistake that I made with the pocket kings. We're not going to 3-bet to some weird size because we're not going to have any 3-bet folds with these effective stack sizes. Don't really want to just flat call here, A, with the nit game being on, and B, pocket queens, they need a little bit more protection than aces do for sure, and maybe versus pocket kings as well. Pocket queens, that is a super premium in this kind of a game. Let's go ahead, stuff it all in there, raise all in for $5,000 effective, and my opponent snap folds. Not too much drama here. Just gonna be forced to take about $800 down in profit without a flop. $80 straddle back on in this hand, and we are first to act, looking down at another pocket pair, the 8s this time, the snowies. Let's go ahead and raise this up to $300, and the player on my left folds before the player 2 to my left gives me a look and decides to play for more money. 3 bets up to $1,200. Once again, we're about $10,000 effective in this hand, and of course with that nit game in full effect, both myself and my opponent here having the nit button still. Under those circumstances, very tempting to raise because we're not super deep here, implied odds not exactly extremely high. EP versus EP though, ranges might narrow a little bit, so after thinking about it for a little while, I decide to put in the call, see what kind of flop comes down. 9-5 deuce with 2 spades, just 1 overcard that usually won't help my opponent too much, so not hating this flop as I check it over to my opponent who does not slow down one bit. It's not a down bet, firing out for $2,000 here. As mentioned, just the 1 overcard, so not too shabby for the pocket 8s, and it's really tempting to continue, of course. I don't want to get exploited here, folding a hand as good as 8s, but just get a bad vibe. Sometimes you're at the table, you can pick up on the vibes. None of the options feel great, but I decide on a fold, and we're gonna get to see what my opponent has, because you have to show down if you want to release your nit button, and my opponent shows down pocket queens. That is a good hand, and that feels pretty good, because this could have gone disastrously worse. Could have very easily put in further aggression pre-flop, and definitely could have continued on that flop, but live poker, you guys. Sometimes going with your gut just works out. In this next hand, nit game, of course, still in effect. $40 straddle is on, and we're first to act, looking down at 2 red 8s. Making some adjustments here with the dynamics in this game going on. It seems like doing a lot of limping from up front makes sense. I think main reason for doing that is because when you open from early position, with the nit game being on, people want to play a lot of hands, so you're going to get floated, and you're going to have to play hands from out of position much more often. Getting floated by weaker ranges is fine, but playing out of position is always tougher than playing in position. Another reason is that people are going to be going after pots much more often, and so I think you're able to trap a lot of those opens, and you can do so by limp 3-betting, and they're just going to be forced to fold a lot of those opens, which allows you to pick up a lot of dead money and release the nit button. Can do that with some good hands, can do that with some middling hands. I don't know, it's not like I plugged all this stuff into a computer, but that's what I'm picking up on. Anyway, when we go ahead and limp the pocket 8s here, we see middle position limp as well, before MJ down at the other end of the table goes ahead and raises it up big, as we've seen a lot of with the constant nit game going on. Here he raises it up to $800 to go. Action back over to us. Do we just want to limp call with pocket 8s? We're not going to get super favorable flops all that often. With these dynamics, pocket 8s can often be the best hand. And do we want to, again, 3-bet to some odd amount where we're going to have a 3-bet fold? Probably not. So with about $6,000 to play for in this spot, we're doing it. We're putting in the old limp jam. Not something I have a ton of experience with, but that's what we're doing here. Go ahead, stuff all the money in there, $6,000, and we see the middle position player get out of the way before MJ. He's got this patented call thing where he just pulls his chips back and signifies one time. So, not exactly thrilled with these developments, and I announce that I have pocket 8s. And we get some good news in the form of MJ announcing that he has 2 overcards. So we are off to the races here. A little over $12,000 or so up for grabs. Flop comes down, all low cards with 2 diamonds, which is great to see. Pocket 8's still good at this point. Turn is the jack of diamonds, so we're unsure. That is one of the overs that we're looking to fade. And the river comes down, another red card. It's the 4th diamond, giving us a flush with our 8 of diamonds. MJ takes a look at his holdings, and he announces that he's got the king of diamonds, which is a better flush, and he rolls over the ace king with the king of diamonds. So 2 overs indeed, but a better flush draw, and is that latter attribute that ends up biting us here. Turns out to be a not so favorable run out. Do like the fact that we got the money in as a very slight favorite, but the variance is through the roof in this game, and that sends us into Stuckville. Time to reload in for our second $5,000 bullet now. Not gonna have too much time to catch our breath because not just the 40 or the 80, we got the $160 straddle on in this hand. We see one limper before action over to us in the cutoff, looking out at pocket 7s. Decide to over limp here, and there's a couple more limpers before action. Back over to MJ Gonzalez, who puts in a raise, adds an additional $1,200 on top of the $160 straddle. Action back over to me now. Just feels like one of those kind of spots. MJ can very easily be getting after it. He's a great player, but he's also fearless. He gives action. He goes after the dead money, especially when it makes sense to with the nit game in full effect. A lot of factors there, and they all are combining in my mind and adding up to jamming our fresh $5,000 bullet into the middle. Sticking the money in there, embracing the variance as we see all of the limpers clear out. Their dead money gets pulled into the middle before action back over to MJ, who once again makes his patented call. He asked me if it's okay if we still go one time because he's actually stuck in this game as well. That's fine. I'm happy to ride the variance waves as well. And this time when I ask him if he's got a pair, he says that he does in fact have a pair. So not exactly feeling super confident with these pocket 7s as we head to the flop, which comes down Jack, Jack, 5. We head to the turn card, which falls a 7. We fill up on the turn, making 7s full of jacks. I toss the 2 7s towards the middle, so my opponent knows that he's up against a boat at this point. MJ shakes his head as we see the river card fall down an 8, and that does not improve his hand as he sends his cards into the muck. So very much riding the variance waves here. Lose a 12K pot, but come back just a couple of hands later to win over a 10K pot. Obviously, that feels good. Question is, did we have the best hand going into this one? I'm not exactly sure. Very strong chance that we did not. I wouldn't say it's a 100% chance though, because as mentioned, MJ can very much get after that dead money. He's definitely not down there at the other end of the table knitting it up. If he looks down at 2 6s following all those limps, I think he's gonna get after it as well. We'll never know for sure though. Very good chance we did not have the best of it going in, but we get to drag this pot in. That, of course, feels fantastic. Now, I mentioned that there would be twists and turns in this game, as if the constant stand-up game is not enough. There's flips galore in this game, and in this one, the boys agree to a $1,200 flip per person. $1,200. I don't know, we're 7-handed or something, maybe 8-handed. This is pure gambling. We're each gonna get a 4-card Omaha hand. There are gonna be 2 boards. Maybe that'll cut down on the variance a little bit. We'll call it 7 ways though, $1,200 a man. We'll deal out 5 cards twice. Everyone gets 4 cards. See who wins. First board gets dealt out, we got nothing, but on the second board, we've got ourselves the nuts. The queen 8 in our hand is gonna make a full house, queens full of 8s, and that is gonna be good for the second half of this pot. Don't get to scooping the whole thing, but not too shabby. There was a bunch of these flips along the way, win some, lose some, but this one was the biggest one, and when you get half of the biggest one, hey, that's pretty sweet. The no limit portion of the game ended around there. The poker game did not end. From there on, the game turned into just straight up double board bomb pots, $100 a hand, capped at $2,000 a hand. It's tough to cover double board PLO bomb pots in vlog form. I made a little bit of an effort, but then gave up shortly after that. But let's just say things went well in that variant of poker. You guys know I'm a Pot Limit Omaha fan these days. Love the 4-card games, and the results in that portion of this poker game definitely went in my favor. Wrapping up the session here at Aria. It was a crazy one as expected. Big shout out to MJ and Boyd and my buddy Benton. There is a solid crew of guys here that host and run this game multiple times a week. So if you're looking for 10-20 with a lot of twists and turns and a lot of action, this is the one that you might want to look into. Guys, we get into this game for $10,000. And we cash out a little bit more than that. Cash out of this game for $20,760. According to my math, that is a profit of $10,760. You'd love to see it. Get back into the mix here in a game in Las Vegas, which has been a little while, especially one of significant stakes. So very happy about this win, to say the least. And, you know, we're going to be back on the road soon. I don't have too much time here in Vegas before I'm going to have to get back to Michigan and be with the folks again. And, of course, I'll be down in Texas again very soon. Guys, check out this website. Use code Andrew because I'm giving away 10 entries to a $5 million free roll right here in Las Vegas. And it costs you nothing to get into it, and it takes you 2 minutes to take care of business over there. So highly suggest you do that if you have not already. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Supposed to ask you guys to subscribe. If I was a professional vlogger, that's what I would do. All right, guys, cheers, and I'll see you guys very soon.